Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Gina.
So I am so thrilled that we are getting to do this together for the 3% conference. Huge fan of the 3% conference. I wanted to take the opportunity also to congratulate you on your new role.
Thank you.
You are head of people for all of WPP,
Yes.
which is extraordinary. And it is an opportunity for us to maybe even expand upon the conversations that you and I have been having over the past year around what it means to be an employee, what it means to come to the office, what does a workplace look like after this crazy forcing factor of everybody going home and working remotely. What do we want to build when we come back? So congratulations on your new role.
Thank you.
Super excited. Are we in the middle of a workplace revolution?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that what I've seen over the last 5 years, companies have been grappling with, remote working and flexible working and not really having, I think, a firm answer on it. And I think and there's a lot of skepticism around it from leaders. And I think with COVID, literally overnight, all of our employees were working remote. And I think nobody believed that it was going to work. And it was sort of a forced experiment that has really shown us that people can work remote and do it really successfully. I think the thing that we're seeing now as, we're starting to grapple with what does it mean to come back is what does it mean for culture? What does it mean for, people who are coming in as new employees? So there's a lot of questions around it, but I think we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to reshape it.
One of the things that I answer questions a lot from our clients is how do we create rules around this? How can you be flexible about being flexible? Because that's really hard for a large organization.
I think that if you really want to embrace hybrid in a modern workforce, you have to be the ultimate and flexible. And I think it puts a lot more pressure on leaders and managers to do this well. And we've sort of taken the perspective of that we want to do a hybrid workplace, but you should encourage your employees to come in based on purposeful work, not to just sit at their desk doing video calls. Right, we have to create an environment for people such that when they come in, there's meaningful collaboration and exchanges, and it's for learning opportunities, for feedback sessions, for pitching, those kinds of things. So really starting to frame up what types of work should you be doing at home, what types of work should you be in the office for, what types of culture and social events is the company having. So it puts a lot more onus on the companies and the leaders to do this well.
We're in the middle of what everybody's talking about. Like if I hear the Great Resignation one more time, or the secession, because 3 million women have dropped out of the workforce in the past 18 months. How are you guys dealing with this? Because this has got to be really hard on your managers and your hiring, your talent officers and HR as well.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is we're in problem-solving mode, right? The same things that we used to do don't work,
yeah.
Right? And I think everything in our business has been about the FTE model, the full-time employee model. And I think trying to embrace fractional working or flexible workforce, we're not built for that. So what we're trying to do now is link arms with our finance partners, our legal partners, our IT, to frame up a way to embrace this new way of working. It's not new, but really to scale it,
yeah.
If that makes sense,
and
to be able to do it quickly. And I think to engage, some of those women that have left the workforce because they don't want to work, full time. And I think it's really important to figure out how we do that well.
So one of the things that I thought would be cool to talk about is the program that we are launching, starting with GroupM. Maybe we'll get a little WPP involvement now, called Let's Be Human. It is what we think of as a human approach to parental and family leave.
So I think, what you and I've been talking about is how do we really pave the way for that to be a very, wonderful experience for the employee and also for the employer, right? So that everybody kind of gets their needs met, but in a way that's much more human.
The idea is everybody just picks up the slack. And I believe there is an opportunity with parental and family leave to kind of change that narrative, and that someone could come from the outside and make a difference and then seamlessly transition out, and no one's careers are affected, and there isn't that worry from the person who's on leave and the team of what's going to happen for this specific period of time.
The thing I love about this also is I think if you think about the team, we were talking about the person who's going on leave, the team who's left behind, if they are having to pick up the slack, there could be resentment and frustration. And then I think the person who's on leave feels a need to check in, and I think this sort of a situation helps to reduce a lot of that. And I think the other piece if we could build on that we have roles that are open a lot of the time, just for roles that we can't fill quickly. And I think we could kind of extend this into that. So for example, when we win a pitch, we get, 30 or 40 open roles. And the team is really, pushing really hard to deliver for the client, and there's a lag time. And I think we could engage, second shift to help fill the gap and get people in working while we work to find the full-time people longer term. This is one of those moments in time that we can sort of jump off and reinvent how that looks. And what we've done is we've actually hired a head of flexible workforce to come in and help us shape how this looks. Because as you know, as many of you know, when you're trying to do this, you have regulatory, there's tax issues, there's all these different things
procurement.
That are super boring that if I have to get involved in them, I'll never solve them. But so we've hired a person to actually help us remove the obstacles, pave the way for this to be easy, and to really shape a much more modern way of engaging the workforce of the future, because there are many people that don't want to be full-time employees, beyond people who are, having children.
Oh, for sure.
There's a lot more people that want more of the gig economy or a free agent kind of status.
So when Jenny and I started the second shift as an opportunity for what we considered a valuable part of the workforce that was slowly but surely meandering out the door as they got older, we thought, why don't we put this against the business side of marketing and advertising? And for me, that's like, now we're crescendoing at that moment. I've told you that I feel like the prom date who's been left with my corsage and the limousine never shows up for all of the advertising conversations that I've had. But this partnership, we're gonna actually do something. Yeah. One of the things that has been so life affirming about meeting you and working with you is you did not come to this during COVID. You have been ahead of the game in thinking and acting and trying to imagine what the world looks like for employees in a different model. Can you just fill us in on what was the kind of the aha or the spark moment and how it led you up to some of the ideas that you have right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say back in it was like 2006. I was just done with the corporate world. I was burnt out. I was tired. I didn't want to do it anymore. I quit my job and started my own company. I started my own executive search and recruitment process outsourcing company. And at the same time, I decided to write a book. And the book was, I think, an exploratory journey for me. So it was about how do you midlife, mid-career, make a change, right? So either figuring out within the corporate structure how to do something really meaningful, or how do you start your own business around something that's you're passionate about. So I set off on this journey with my husband. We had an Airstream. We traveled around the country.
So awesome.
We interviewed people who had done that, and so I created a process for how you do that as an individual. And I think through that journey, I realized that there are so many people in different phases of their lives, right? And that companies have, So you may be a young person who's just starting out. You have a certain way of working. You may have children, and you might want to opt out and work in a different way. I think employers need to adjust to suit all the different life stages and various, places people are in their journey. And I think when you do that, you get a much better diverse set of employees, people who bring all these different experiences. I think it's a much better way of working. If you think about WPP, for example, and GroupM, over the years, historically, we were all about, it was very much internal competition, and you were not encouraged to go and seek out opportunities within. In fact, it was very much discouraged. I think since Mark took over at WPP, we've been working through how do you really facilitate people moving around within, between all the different operating companies so that they can get different experiences based on what they want, so that they don't leave and go somewhere else and they can get a lot within. And it's the same with engaging flexible talent, right? So you have a very different mix and a very different way of operating than we used to.
And there is the idea that you and I have talked about a lot, is that only advertising people can work in advertising because only advertising people understand advertising. And one of the things that I find so interesting about this idea of flexible work as well, and I think it's across so many industries that the second shift serves, is somebody from the outside might have a completely different point of view, and the opportunity for there to be a little aha moment when somebody who hasn't worked within the walls of a specific industry comes into a team.
I think if we don't go and engage people from other industries and other backgrounds, it's going to hurt us in the long term.
What happens if we don't do this? What happens if all of the Fortune articles and all of the stuff that everybody's been talking about and all of the play pretend then that we're going to change, but we're going to go back to the Henry Ford model of everybody's on the line and you have to be there to put your widget in or else the machine doesn't get built.
Will fail. I mean, I really do believe that. I think that our employee population, I think across all industries, is asking for change, and they're in the driver's seat right now. And I do know that leadership is listening now, and I think people really get it. It's just, I think it's not easy, but we're trying to figure it out. And the thing we've said to our employees is what we're embarking on is not easy. We're going to take this road of hybrid and trying to figure it out and iterate as we go and test and learn. So we're asking for a little bit of forgiveness as we try to figure it out, but we think it's the right thing. I think some companies find it really easy just to say, you know, you need to be back here however many days a week, but I think that feels arbitrary to employees, right? They want it to be meaningful and purposeful. And I think our job, you know, as leadership is to figure out ways to make that work.
How do we take the opportunity to push this forward? And what would be your advice for everybody else who's watching this session within their own agency worlds and within their own companies to do that?
Well, I think it's, you know, it's having a plan, right? It's being really clear. And I think the thing that I mentioned that is boring is the regulatory and compliance issues that I think you've got to solve those up front. Otherwise, it's very easy to have all those gates of no. And so to me, we're trying to like remove all of that stuff on the front end and make the path easy.
Yeah.
And that to me is key to it. And that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, or the blocks, because trying to figure those things out when you're like in an HR or a talent acquisition role and when everybody's busy and hair on fire.
Totally.
So I think the key is just removing all of those obstacles, and I think it makes it a lot easier. But having a vision for it and how you're going to market it and how you're going to talk about it is key. As, you know, employers, we have to really think about, you know, that whole notion of work is a part of life, not the other way around. And how do we do our policies and work like with partners like yourself to have a much more modern approach to it?
So the idea of bringing this hybrid model, not just to your workplace, but to yourself, how has that, do you see your team taking that on as well?
Yeah, I think, we had conversations like throughout COVID about, I encouraged the team to take time that they needed for themselves because I expressed how, I mean, I had moments where I was so exhausted and so tired and, you know, working around the clock and trying to, you know, own that and be vulnerable to the team and encouraging them to take the time they need to so they don't hit that burnout. And how do we help our employees? I think that's critical. And I think COVID was hard as shit. Like, it was awful.
Yeah.
But there are some silver linings. And I think we all learned a lot collectively and individually, and I think we need to continue to bring those things forward.
And we broke a lot of stuff too, right? We broke a lot of ideas about what it is to be an employee, where you need to work, when you need to work, and the mythology around the workplace, even culture. You and I have talked about how the idea of culture, that myth kind of went away in some ways because people were still in each other's lives and we did still build teams. And you did still get work done.
And I've noticed too, being back in the office, that I've really enjoyed being back and seeing people and like having those moments that are just, you know, not scheduled.
Yeah.
To like interact and like solve problems very, very quickly. So to me, the whole hybrid notion, I really resonates with me personally, to be able to be at home on days where I really just want to put my head down and focus, and then go in when I, you know, want to have those moments. And I think it's important for people too. I know people who have children really want to be able to be there at school to pick their kids up or to, you know, go to their events. And I think this new way of working much more allows for that.
We got to know each other as human beings outside of the office, and there's a vulnerability in that that I know may not be the stereotypical hard-charging employee, but I found that especially with some of my clients, it really enabled me to connect with them on a more human level, which just made business that much easier.
Yeah.
So we are here at the 3% conference. Well, we're not at the 3% conference, but we're at the 3% conference. So impressed with the work that Kat Gordon and her team have done and pushing forward specific agendas. That's what we're doing. We're trying to push forward this agenda around, starting with parental and family leave, around flexible and hybrid work. How do we take advantage of this moment so that it is not that, oh, we thought it was going to all be different, and 2022, it just all turned out to be the same.
A big thing that I try to do is test learn, and iterate, right? There's a lot of new ways to do things, and you've got to try. And I try to pilot them and do them on a small scale, and then find the things that work and then scale them. It's much easier to get the kind of funding that you need and to test new partners and to test new ways of working if you do it small first and then build on it. I think that's critical. And find, a coalition of the willing, people who, managers or leaders who really have a passion for this that can work with you on kind of building that business case. Honestly, it's a moment in time right now to take hold of this, right? I don't think there'll ever be another moment like this, at least not in my lifetime, probably, to really,
God, I hope not.
to really shake things up,
Yeah.
and to use this moment to its fullest potential, because I don't think we'll ever have another one like it.
Well, the inflection point that you've talked about having to be brave, it sounds to me like you being so future thinking in your total in your career in total has made you a perfect emissary for this moment. I think that it is important for those folks that are not seeing the path to have a role model like you, Jennifer, who is taking chances and working through hard problems.
I've been waiting for a moment like this for the last, if I look back to 2007 when I wrote that book, I think it was a little bit ahead too, because I was challenging the notion of the whole 40-hour work week, and why, that was from the industrial age, and why do we still do that? And, here we still are, a little bit. So I do think it's an incredible moment to really challenge it.
Well, and it's one that we've been waiting at the second shift for quite some time. So to be in this moment with you, it's so fantastic, because you need a partner in it too. You can't have this moment in a void, or else nothing gets done.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gina.